Howdy, partners. You're listening to Conversations with Jacob, hosted by my good friend, Jacob Waller. Make sure to check out the podcast where podcasts are available and check out the video version on YouTube. You can follow us on social media. Facebook is Conversations with Jacob. Twitter is at CWJ Podcast. And you can visit our website, conversationswithjacobpodcast.weebly.com. Hey, you got a show idea? Maybe a guest suggestion? Email us at conversationswithjacob@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Jacob Waller.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Jacob. Today, I got a great guest with us today. It's Chris Myers from Fox Sports. Of course, when Chris does shows like NASCAR, he does the NFL and baseball, and he even does a dog show. So let's welcome to the podcast, Chris Myers.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jacob. It's a pleasure. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, same to you. I guess to get this podcast started, can you tell us how you get into broadcasting?
Well, I was a young kid from a big family in Miami, South Florida, North Miami, technically, and was in between homework, listening to the radio and listening to sports talk. Where people call in and local. It was a local Miami radio show called Sportsline, a couple hours a night, but we had a national flavor to it. There were a lot of people from different parts of the country, New York, Boston, Cleveland, and they'd call and talk about their teams in all sports, and really was listening to that. I was a fan of interviews and radio anyway as a kid. But then I called in, and it's funny, I heard on your intro, I was a big John Wayne fan, influenced from my dad, a fan of his acting work. But anyway, I called in from Chris from, Miami, and then I would call back and just try to disguise my voice as Duke from North Miami. And it was kind of a John Wayne sounding, grumbling voice, so it wouldn't sound the same. And I would get on the air more often. And so that happened over a period of time. And they had fan night. They invited me down to the radio station. I didn't even have my license yet. My father to drive me down, and then they see this. I said I had to tell them I was, the same guy, same kid. Really, at the time I was 15, and so I worked behind the scenes on weekends, still in high school, and then got my license, and then filled in on the radio while I was actually still in high school, part time, of course, and then got into some college to help get into television. But that's really how it began, and I just always enjoyed talking to people, hearing people talk about sports, athletes, what made them tick, and I kind of grew from that, which was an interesting beginning. So I've always kind of, I helped branch out into Fox Sports Radio when they began. ESPN Radio, started that with Mike Tirico, and of course through the TV years, but always have had a kind of a fascination and an enjoyment for radio as well. But then, of course, television sports exploded through the years after ESPN and now with Fox. And so it's an interesting beginning, but you never forget your roots.
Now, did you ever think that you would be broadcasting, or did you have like another dream job like growing up?
Yeah, well, no, I kind of just followed the path of, I knew I wanted to do more of this, meaning more of media. And so the next step from radio, at least to transition, was to get on television and get, locally on TV in Miami, which was, again, a fortunate break there. And then as a reporter, and then go to New Orleans TV there, and then ESPN spotted me. So it was kind of a growing constantly. What else can I do and expand in this area and learn along the way? So kind of a natural progression, and then got into, from hosting shows to interviews to reporting on games to doing play-by-play. And so there, as the industry grew, there were other channels, and now every sport has its own channel. It wasn't just ESPN, the only game in town, and the competition, obviously, from Fox and others. And then social media, certainly, along with the continuance of radio and the expansion of XM Sirius Radio. So all of those options, there were just constantly things going on to do, and it was kind of a natural progression, I guess.
So when did you start working for NASCAR?
That started, and I did some ESPN interviews with NASCAR drivers when I was hosting Up Close after Roy Firestone in the late 90s. My brothers are both, I have an older and a younger brother. They were big car guys growing up, whether it was dragsters or drag races or NASCAR, whatever. But I was more into football, baseball as a kid. But when Fox got the rights to NASCAR, the very first Daytona 500 that they broadcast in 2001, and that portion of the season, Darrell Waltrip was our analyst. Jeff Hammond, the former crew chief, Larry McReynolds, part of that as well. So we were assembling a kind of a group, and I they hired me, I think, in that role to be the guy who is a broadcaster and the guy who asks the right questions. But I said, I'm not a gearhead. I mean, I enjoy the competition, the strategy, and I know the drivers in the sport. But they said, we don't want that. We want from our host, we want somebody, you got to know what's going on, but we let the analyst and the former crew chief and the former driver and pit reporters, they'll bring the information and you ask the questions so that we can bring more fans into the sport. It was thought of as a regional sport. And then Fox helped. I got to give the network credit because they, on a big network expanding the coverage along with those in NASCAR going to different tracks. We wanted to expose more people to it, invite them into the tent, so to speak. And even if you weren't a car guy or a gearhead, you can appreciate the strategy of the drivers, the kind of involvement, the risk reward, the uniqueness of this, this once a week big event kind of racing. So that was really my first, and that was of course, the tragic Daytona 500 with the loss of Dale Earnhardt, which changed the sport in a number of ways, but also in ways of making it safer. And here it is, 20 plus years later, and Fox continuing on the coverage, and at least in the first half of the NASCAR season, and having the Great American Race, the prize of it all. And it really has been, no pun intended, a very enjoyable ride.
Now, I've talked to Derek Cope and John Roberts, that works in NASCAR.
Yep.
They told me some stories about Dale Earnhardt. Do you got a story?
Well, the only story, I had interviewed him before in a different format and had talked to him the week before that Daytona 500. And he had kind of this aura about him. Not only as a driver, they called him the Intimidator. He was aggressive, and he had such a great fan following and support. I liked his kind of low key bravado confidence, and yet he was not in person away from the wheel or the track. He was a regular guy, a kind of a warm, easygoing guy, man of few words, and like to have fun, but a simple guy, and I mean that in a good way, and knew what he wanted to do and do it well. I mean, that struck me about him, and having talked to him before that Daytona 500, I just, there was a line in there about how things were looking good. He had finally won his Daytona 500, and obviously the Dale Earnhardt Incorporated DEI, the car that Michael Waltrip ended up winning in, it was kind of, he was helping, especially in the 500, it's teamwork, it's pushing and that kind of thing, and really helping to set that up. And then the unfortunate accident. So it's still shocking to think that was, our first as a Fox broadcast, and my first experience at a Daytona 500 with and the last with Dale Earnhardt. But since, having done this, worked with people like Jeff Gordon was on the broadcast with Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick now, with Fox, a number of other different analysts. Tony Stewart has stepped in, great champions of the sport that we've been able to appreciate. And they certainly have filled me in on some of the great Earnhardt stories, especially Jeff Gordon, who, was kind of the rival of Earnhardt. He learned a lot from going against Earnhardt, and Earnhardt helped him. Even when he got booed, he's like, hey, that means you're making a difference somehow, if people are even rooting against you. So it was a life-changing moment for those fans of Earnhardt and of the sport. And still, as years go by, we connect so much to the late, great Dale Earnhardt.
Now with you being, if you working for NASCAR, how much preparation does it go into for every show?
Yeah, quite a bit goes in. I mean, almost like you'd prepare for a football game. The difference, when we do football as a play-by-play, you have different teams every week with the Fox Network. For my role on the pre-race show, with especially let's say Daytona 500, we also have the Clash, which starts the season the last few years out at the LA Coliseum, a creative idea by NASCAR. It depends on what we want to focus on. In other words, is there a new car this year? Have certain drivers come into the sport, other drivers retired or elevated from a different series to come in? So other than the strategy of the race, and so the preparation, we connect that. We lean on our analysts and our crew chiefs to say, okay, this is what the buzz in the garage is, and then what are fans? You try to listen to them before a race. What are they talking about? Is they think this driver has been out of line. They think this driver is not living up to his name. What's going on with this particular brand of car? Is somebody bending the rules a little bit? So there's a lot of that. And we start, with a conference call on Tuesday, and then we go over notes. I have a researcher that helps me who's grown up in the sport, who has helped his uncle actually help with the scoring system. So we go over certain information that we want to cover, and then we try to fit it all in. That's the hard part. And we have a number of people that we work into, whether it's a half hour, an hour pre-race show on Fox, or even when we do FS1. And so you got to figure, okay, the pit reporters are going to cover this. Our analysts, will cover this. It's my role to distribute. And in the Daytona 500, we have a little bit more time. It's a much bigger pre-race show. There's a lot more involved with driver introductions and that type of thing. So you have to sort all of that out. So it's a few days of preparation, but the good news is, unlike different teams every week, you pretty much know the same drivers, with the occasion of a couple of new guys coming in or out. So you just try to build on what the drivers did previously or what you know about them in terms of personality. And then we always try at Fox to bring out something different about a driver that you may not know. This guy, what his hobbies are away from. Does this guy play pickleball to loosen up? How does this guy relax before a race? Those kinds of things that are kind of fun.
Now, do you got a favorite driver?
Good question. I grew up. It's funny. I don't, because in the business you try, just like a football team. You grow up rooting for certain people, and you're a fan. I grew up. I kind of liked Dale Jarrett before he got into the actual calling of races. He was somebody we watched. I come from kind of what has been a Ford family, and we used to have relatives in Ohio that were Chevy. Our cousins were Chevy, and so we, our brothers, we'd clash about best driver, best cars, that type of thing, which is great to have those two manufacturers in the sport. But I certainly appreciate along the way personalities. Even a current guy like a Brad Keselowski and a Denny Hamlin are kind of both very different. Denny hasn't won that championship yet, but I like their personality. And the more, and that's one thing I can say, that Jacob, having been around, just like other athletes in other sports, a lot of the drivers, they're really, even a Tony Stewart who had this tough exterior, he's a really good guy underneath. These are hardworking, passionate guys about what they do, and so even if they act a little out of line on the track, that they're basically good guys, competitive and trying to win. So I don't mean to duck the question, but yes, I have to. In today's day and age, I root for good guys, and there's a lot of good guys out there, kind of thing. But as a broadcaster, you're supposed to be impartial. So that's a little bit of my background. But yeah, even going back into the old days with Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip, but Rusty, when I say old days, Rusty Wallace, that era of drivers, even a Ricky Rudd, there were certain guys I just kind of liked watching them race and the way they race. So those are some names of guys that I rooted for before I actually got into working on the Fox NASCAR broadcast.
Now, with the Daytona 500 coming up, is there like a driver that we need to be on the lookout for, the one that might kind of dominate the season?
Yeah, well, the season, it's so different. I mean, Ryan Blaney, I think, who won last year, he finished strong. Remember, he didn't win a race the year before. And I like that it's not as predictable as back in the Richard Petty when the King did dominate, which is why, I didn't leave his name out on purpose. He was almost so good. It's almost like, is anybody else going to be able to challenge him when you go back? This year, we look at guys right away, like, a champ or two-time champ like Kyle Busch, who's yet to win at the Daytona 500. Is he running out of chances? When will this be his breakthrough? And even a guy like Jimmy Johnson, who's retired from the sport, and has been the champ, has won this race before, but he's going to be racing. He's not going to be in the same kind of car that he was in when he was with Hendrick Motorsports. So that's a name driver with a different kind of a challenge. So I think those are the early kind of storylines that we'll be watching. And you always look at a defending champ of the sport. And Ryan Blaney's very good on these kinds of tracks. At a place like Daytona, he certainly has shown what we used to call them, super speedway restrictor plate tracks, however you want to reference it. So that could be a good storyline to kind of look into as well.
You got a favorite track that you like to go to?
Oh, yeah. Well, I do. It's funny. I was a diehard short track guy, and then experienced a little more of, Talladega. It just wows me. The craziness of the scene with it, but also it can be, it's like a lot in life. You're riding along and everything's okay. And then all of a sudden, boom, bang, everything changes, and who's going to survive it? And so I would put, Talladega to the top. I know that there's been a demand. At least fans have said, and NASCAR has felt they want more short tracks, but the short track package, in other words, do they give enough horsepower? Well, we'll find out soon. Are they making the cars with enough horsepower where we've changed the shape and the look of the new car, but the drivers want to still be able to have some speed on the short tracks, so there's more passing. But I think we've seen a few daring to try to do a few more things with Rovals, and even the Chicago street race was I'm just thinking out loud of the variety of tracks. And California will soon be a short track, what used to be the Auto Club Speedway, once that's completed. So, but I like those. I still enjoy that. There's the usual, the Martinsville and the Bristols and Richmond. But I would say Talladega, at least become more of a fan. And I would put that certainly. I would start up there and then go with any short track.
Now I've seen a lot of people on Facebook make this same comment. They want to bring back The Rock.
Right.
Rockingham. Do you think that NASCAR should do that?
I don't know that they should. I think they'll consider it, and it's good that the sport listens to the fans. I mean, that's a reason. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. pushed, North Wilkesboro, right? Yeah. Going back, we had the All-Star race there, and I think this is not a disrespect to a track, but to an atmosphere. The sports become grand scale, big time, and so you can go back to its roots, and you never forget your roots and your fan base. And The Rock, you have to, just like they had to do with North Wilkesboro. I mean, you need to have Wi-Fi in stadiums and racetracks. That's phones. It's a way to get in with the tickets, security, whatever people can't live without. So you need to make sure you have those some other basic inroads, traffic flow. And then you have to worry about what the on-track performance is. Maybe the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro didn't quite live up to that, but I think they're working on that for next year or for the next race there. So I would say, given they're going to race in Iowa, I think now on the schedule, in the Cup schedule more. Why not? But make sure that I hate to say modernize, you've updated it without losing its charm. And we've done that in other sports, whether it's Wrigley Field or Fenway Park, or, even if you go back to Camden Yards in Baltimore, they built it with kind of that old school style, and they're now in a way of upgrading it. So I think that's okay to do that. I think if fans want that, we should do that, but who pays for that, how it's covered, and then the attendance of getting in and out of the track is important. But we did some early races at The Rock, and it felt like going back in time a little bit, but the racing was good there, at least back when we were doing races there.
When did you become broadcasting for the NFL?
That was just through covering one of the first interviews I did in radio was the great Don Shula, along with Muhammad Ali, the great fighter. They were in Miami and South Florida. And that was kind of my first love, watching football on TV, which really drew me into other sports like NASCAR, baseball, and then have covered a number of different sports. So there was a chance as a reporter to do that. And then growing up in Miami, back at the time I was there, South Florida, working, there was the University of Miami football, and then there was the Dolphins football. There weren't, they didn't have Major League Baseball and the NBA, their own teams at the time. So that was kind of what we gravitated to. And when I was hired in New Orleans, the other local station, I started to cover that more and more. And that's what ESPN saw and hired me as their, really, Jimmy Roberts and I were the first West Coast, or first reporters, I should say, that they ever had. ESPN had the studio groups, but he had the East Coast with New York, and they moved me out to the West Coast to be the West Coast reporter. And so I was just kind of put in that position. And through those years of ESPN growing, I kind of grew with the NFL and had contacts, was there. One of my early assignments for ESPN was they said, go they described it, this crazy oil guy from Arkansas is going to buy the Cowboys and fire the great Tom Landry. So go there and cover the story. I ended up spending a week there with Jerry Jones, and then the hiring of Jimmy Johnson, and then the drafting of Troy Aikman. So you go back through those Super Bowl years and have always been tied to the NFL in that regard. And after Fox got baseball, they got the NFL, but then they got NASCAR and baseball. So it was an opportunity when I transitioned from after 10 years at ESPN to go to Fox to do football, primarily to do some football and baseball. And then when they got NASCAR, they said, hey, we want you in that spot as well. So I got to be honest with you, I'm a fan of a lot of sports, but I would get bored if I just covered one sport and then that was it. I like the idea of and I like the different roles of hosting a NASCAR show, pre-race show or post or whatever, and doing interviews there, or, versus the NFL where I'm doing play-by-play. And then with baseball, I'm doing a studio show, which is kind of a highlight show with analysts talking about the games. And so I like the variety of not only in the business, but the different sports that I'm covering, because there is sometimes a connection or a crossover and that you use when you're interviewing players, athletes, coaches, drivers, etc.
So basically, I would then you're all over the place.
Yes. Yeah, I know. That's what, when I'm home on a weekend, so my wife says, what are you doing here? Isn't there something you should be covering? So, but I do have time off. There's certain gaps, again, Fox doesn't cover the entire NASCAR season. We just have that first portion, and we are limited on some of the baseball. And just like with the NFL now, the NFL is spread out, just like NASCAR, really on with streaming services, which is a good thing for the sports to kind of branch out on other channels. So I like staying busy, because if I wasn't working at it, I probably, obviously with my family and my own hobbies, but I'd probably be watching or try to go or talk to my friends about what's going on in those particular sports.
Now, with the Super Bowl coming up, do you have any predictions?
Wow. Well, as we're talking now, there's a lot that can happen. I'll tell you, when the year started, I predicted, just when people asked, I talked about a 49er Dolphin Super Bowl. I think certainly Buffalo, I know they haven't played their best football, but they could make a run. I know some people would like to see Dallas get there, but those at least, so I'll stay with the early prediction, whether that carries out. It's looking good for the 49ers the way it started in their situation. The Dolphins have had some really big moments and then some other moments where they haven't been as sharp, but I like that it's been an interesting, and that there's so many teams involved in just getting into the playoffs, the extra format, the extra wild card spot. So I think it'll be a good. Fox doesn't have this year's Super Bowl in Las Vegas, but Fox will carry the next year's Super Bowl, which will be played in New Orleans.
All right. Oh, so I'm going to ask you this question, which you may not have an answer, but I'll ask anyways. What is your thoughts on this whole Taylor Swift thing appearing at the football games?
Yeah, well, I don't. Look, we've had moments before where where an athlete has been involved with a famous celebrity. Go back historically, the Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, right? Mr. Coffee, if you want to go back historically, and there have been some others, not to the degree though where we are now, where the exposure is the NFL ratings are through the roof. And Taylor Swift is a terrific, she's an exceptional talent and businesswoman who's very successful and has such a following, and impressively, whether they're older women, younger women, guys, whatever, she has that it factor. So I don't mind it. I think you can't ignore it. I wouldn't belabor it. And I think after a while, both her and Travis Kelce are probably like, this is nice, and the attention comes with the job. But we also we want to do our jobs, and we want to enjoy our time privately as well. But again, all the attention does help sell more of her records and give Travis Kelce more attention to sell jerseys if he wants, or for more people to become Chief fans. That's a good question. Are there more Chief fans or more Swifties out there? Taylor Swift fans. I don't know. So I'm not bothered by it. I wouldn't overdo it. I haven't called one of their guys. I covered the Chiefs in the Super Bowl when they won their first one with Andy Reid and Mahomes when they beat the 49ers. I was on that sideline. They were great to work with, and I think they know how to focus. Obviously, Taylor Swift wasn't a part of that. But if they get there again, my goodness, you put Taylor Swift on top of a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, that would be a story that I think a lot of people will go crazy over.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when did you get involved with baseball?
I was covering in Florida when I was starting in radio and then local TV part-time. A lot of spring training there in Florida, which they don't have as much as they did back then. They've kind of split with Arizona. Arizona has an incredible number. So there I got to know players that were coming up with teams, some established veterans, and then also managers and people from around the league. And so I hadn't called a lot. I did some stuff with the Cubs channel. I hadn't called a lot of play-by-play on baseball, but I did Baseball Tonight with Chris Berman back in the early years when they started that show, helped establish and put that show on the air. And then with the opportunity when Fox got baseball kind of transitioned. So I was more of a highlight interview, follow the game, a kind of baseball guy. And again, that's something that doesn't leave me. I'm still a fan. And if I get a chance to watch a game or go to a game, I do.
All right, now this right here might be a question that you can't answer, but do you got a favorite person that you like to work with?
Well, it's a good question, and I won't. I'll just say some of the people that I have worked with. Certainly in NASCAR, Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer have been are terrific. I mean, really, our NASCAR group's a close group going back to Darrell Waltrip and Larry McReynolds and Jeff Hammond, our pit reporters, really outstanding people, and some good people behind the scenes too that help to bring the audio and the pictures, and that goes for every sport, NFL, baseball. Dontrell Willis on baseball is a blast to work with in the studio, and then football. I've worked with Troy Aikman a lot. Daryl Johnston is an analyst. Rondé Barber was also someone that I have really enjoyed time with. So that kind of covers some of the people that I've been on the air with, and I hate to put anybody ahead of anybody else, but those were a few that, and not just working with them, that I got to know a little better and hang out with a little bit.
Well, since this is January 1st, it's the start of a new year. Do you get any new plans for 2024? Something that you want to work towards or work on, or?
Yeah, well, I'm a big, and whether you call it a New Year resolution, I do think it's important to, and I still do this. And it's funny, I did this as a kid starting in radio, and I guess I learned this from school. I would put every first of the year, it wasn't really a resolution. It was more a list of things I wanted to kind of accomplish, right? Probably 10. And some of them could be as simple as, read this or get an A here, or, learn this subject or and then as I got through the years, it was more like, okay, to work in a television, to earn a certain amount of money. I want to get, I had my goal set on a new car, this type of particular car, to own a house, some of it was, hey, lose 10 pounds or get better at golf or improve my temper, be more patient. Those kinds of things. So some, and I think that some were long range goals, some were short term. So I still do that. I keep a note card. I mean, now I can punch it into my phone, and then I see at the end of the year, and some of them, it took a long time to get there, to get those goals. Some I was able to accomplish. So when I get closer, I've given it a little thought where we're talking here. Obviously, I have to do it in the first part of the year, and some of them are not just year goals; they're like long range. But you got to get started during the year. So yeah, I'll have some. Sometimes I'll share them. Sometimes I won't because some people laugh and think, oh, you'll never do that. But I've been able to at least accomplish a lot of the things that I had set out to do that were important to me. So I think it's a good thing for people to do if they're realistic about it.
All right. And where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I have a website, Chris Myers, Myers, Chris Myers Sports with an S.com, an S at the end. And that has a lot of my old interviews on it and conversations, some type of, there's a daily briefing of football info, and we put NASCAR notes during the season, some stats that are up there. You have to look and you can click that on. So that's one thing. And then there's _Chris Myers on X Twitter or Twitter X. And then Chris Myers Fox at Instagram, and Instagram's a whole new thing with a lot of pictures, and I don't have a lot of time to post a lot of things, but when I have a chance, I do enjoy. And I really appreciate some of the people on social media that do things like this, whether it's a clip of a podcast or some information that they are sending out about various things in sports. It's a nice way to follow things along with what we do in television and radio, et cetera.
All right. Before I let you go, do you get any closing thoughts for the people that's listening?
Well, no, just I appreciate the audience, because without the audience, and we talk about ratings, and I don't take that for granted. First, you get into the business for a lot of different reasons, but I have seen and met people that watch, and whether they're angry with your call or annoyed that you didn't say this, I know they're there and they care, and that's why we're here doing the job. We're getting paid, and we're fortunate to be in something like this that we enjoy. But the audience, however they're there, it's just good to know they're there. And whenever they give feedback, we try to listen. We're doing the best we can to bring you the best product on the TV broadcast. And so appreciate that you are there and that you care. And especially, too, every sport loyal fans, we get that. But NASCAR from the beginning, and I was new to that back in 2000, have seen their loyalty through the good years and the lean years. And so I'll never lose sight of that. Very grateful for that.
All right, Chris. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast and talk about your career, which with me, which I really enjoyed it, which I learned a lot from you, and can't wait to see you back on NASCAR.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we look forward to the Clash, and then the Clash is the week before the Super Bowl, and then the week after, of course, is the Sunday, the Daytona 500. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, that's a wrap for today's episode of Conversations with Jacob. Tune in next week for another interview. Until then, and we'll see you then.